European banks are in chaos. The Euro Stoxx Bank Index, this is a weighted index of 26 European banks. If you search SX7E on your platform, you'll find this index. The index contains many large banks from Europe, includes Santander, BNP, SocGen, UniCredit. The largest banks of Europe make up this index. Now, if we take a look at this index, this is showing a huge red warning of the chaos that's unfolding in European banks. Let's take a look at the chart. We have the chart here running from today back to the late 80s. It made an all-time low of 79 back in 1988. It then rallied to an all-time high of 485 in 2007. But as you can see, as of today, we are knocking on the historical low of 79. Today's price is 79 and change, so we're only marginally above the all-time low. I wouldn't be surprised if we broke below the 1988 low today or over the next few days. This is a huge alarm of the problems that are developing in Europe and the Eurozone, the problems within the European banking sector and also the wider banking sector of the globe. Now, why is this happening? We have negative interest rates in the Eurozone, so banks are actually paying money to the European Central Bank for deposits they hold with the central bank. This is just another squeeze in an already difficult climate facing banks in Europe. You know, many of these banks have huge amounts of bad assets still on their balance sheet. These are assets that haven't been resolved since 07-08, the housing bubble. I think many investors are just looking at these European banks now. They're seeing the coming slowdown in Europe, the UK, Asia, United States. The global economy is going into recession now. So you're not going to be very optimistic on European banks in this climate. We already have super low interest rates. We already printed a lot of money. And this is the state of the European economy. So it's a huge bearish signal. This is a huge red flag, a red warning alarm going off. Not many people pay much attention to this. So you're not going to be hearing much about this on the BBC 6 o'clock news, but banks in Europe under huge pressure. I think many investors are looking at these banks and thinking, what happens if the Euro Monetary Union project fails, if the Euro collapses? What is going to happen to all these banks? You know, the Euro project, in my opinion, has only about 10 or 15 years more left to play. It could even break up sooner than that as the economic downturn bites in Europe. It could pressure countries to start leaving. We'll start seeing the breakup of the monetary union project. In my opinion, 10-15 years may come sooner than that. Obviously, retail banks are being squeezed massively by the low interest rate environment. Retail bank, i.e. the bank you hold your current account with, because interest rates are so low. You know, traditionally, retail banks make money by, you have a current account, you have a savings account, and then with the portion of the money that's in all these current accounts and savings accounts, and the bank then loans that out. Because interest rates are so low, the spread between what they pay on your current account at the moment is that basically you get nothing in it if your money's in a current account or even a savings account. But then what they can loan it out for, that spread is very small because of the low interest rate environment. So retail banks really being squeezed. So investment banks certainly could cut fairly good profits in this interest rate environment because they can basically borrow at near zero, and if they can find any asset class that pays a reasonable return, and that's an easy way for an investment bank to make money. But these retail banks are really being squeezed by this low interest rate environment. So even if the ECB push interest rates lower, that's not really going to solve this crisis. In fact, it's probably going to put more pressure, if anything, on these retail banks. You know, most of these banks are already paying billions of pounds a year to the European Central Bank because rates are negative, so they are paying to hold money at the ECB. So that is just a further squeeze these European banks are facing. So low interest rates aren't really going to help. I'd expect to see at some point in the future more calls for bailouts as we start seeing some of these banks starting to topple. There are going to be more bailouts, more quantitative easing, the traditional form of quantitative easing that we already saw after the 2007-2008 housing bubble burst. And I think we may even see even more extraordinary money printing, even above and beyond the QE we've already seen. I think we're going to get to the point that the Europe, ECB, even in the UK are probably going to want to prop up these banks so badly. It won't even be just traditional asset purchasing QE we've seen before. I think they're just going to print money, print digital currency, or create digital currency and just give it to the bank. So just say, like, if you're a bank in Europe, here's 50 billion euros a year. spend it as you like, dump the liquidity into the system, stoke inflation, try and kickstart the economy. We don't even want the money back. I would think that at this point the ECB are looking at ideas as radical as that. They just want to dump liquidity into the system. If we look at after the housing bubble 07-08, if we look at the sovereign debt crisis we've seen in Greece, you know, just the world elite, whether it's central bankers, whether it's politicians, they always want to save the banks. We saw that clearly in 2007, 2008, as the politicians stepped in, central banks around the world bailed out the banks. We saw this in when Greece was looking like it was going to go bankrupt. You know, the idea of the Greek bailout wasn't to save Greece or the Greek people, it was to save European banks who obviously had large amounts of Greek bonds on their books. So we can tell by just recent history, the politicians are going to try and save these banks at all costs. So expect just crazy political ideas at this point. I think they're just going to print money, create digital currency, just give it to the banks, not even ask for the money back. This won't even be a loan. I think we're going to go down the road. They'll just give banks money. They'll just want their liquidity into the system because everybody's supposedly worried about deflation at this point. So that's a way of creating inflation. I think inflation is the big thing we need to be worrying about long term. But let me know your thoughts and feelings on this. SX7E, Euro Stoxx Bank Index. It's a huge red flag, guys. If you'd invested in this back in 1988, you basically wouldn't have made anything up till now. Yes, you would have got some dividend return on it. You would have made almost nothing after how many years of investment? 31 years of investment. So it's crazy times. It's a huge red flag. Share this video if you want to get the message out there of the huge problems that are coming within the Eurozone, within the global economy, the European economy, even coming to the UK. But it's Jason from Liberty Bunkers sign off, and I'll see you in the next video.